In 1966, we loaded our three little kids in a Chevy carryall. They were 7, 5, and 2 years old, and traveled for 7 days first to the city of Guadalajara, Mexico, to study the language, Spanish, and then we traveled on down after 8 months, on down to El Salvador. And we went with the full assurance that God had called us, and that God was leading us, and that God was with us. For the first year, everything went smoothly. We traveled all over the country to get to know the people and the customs, the culture. That year, I ministered in 100 different churches. We gave short-term Bible courses in different churches also, and we were so thankful that the Lord had given us that privilege. But then we started hitting some bumps in the road. First of all, I came down with malaria and spent like 4 months in bed, not being able to function. And during that very same time, there was a war that started out between the two countries, El Salvador and Honduras. When I was in bed, I could hear the planes flying over, and I could hear guns firing and bombs bursting, and could do nothing.
About the same time, in fact, just a couple of months later, our son David, who was 8 years old at the time, came down his appendix. After he had surgery, they found out he had tuberculosis. And he was getting better, and I started to get sick. At first, we couldn't figure out what it was, but they finally came up with the idea that it was tuberculosis too. So I was down sick. And then our youngest son came down with hepatitis. He was just 3 years old at the time. So just one thing after another happened at that special time.
After that, we came home on furlough. We're home for a year, and then went back for our second term in El Salvador. And we were certain that that term had to be much better than the first term. But 6 months after we arrived in the field, the only member of our family that had been healthy during those first years, Sharon, our oldest daughter, happened to be the end of the year. She came down with some violent type of virus, and in just 36 hours she went to be with the Lord. I was in charge of our Bible school, but I began to feel tired, and I just could not function. One day I went back to our house, and there were just 3 little steps to get up into our house, and I couldn't make it up the steps. I was so weak. And so I was rushed to the hospital, and they found that I had hepatitis. I spent 4 months in bed recuperating from hepatitis. During that time, we just wondered, maybe we made a mistake. But we looked back at our call, that God had called us, and that God had promised to be with us. And the thing that we learned during those moments, those days, those months, was that we just had to trust in God. That He knew what was going on, that He was in charge, that He had called us, that He had promised to be with us, So all we had to do was to trust in him.
That even though he slayed me, I'll still trust him. Like Job said, no matter what happens, we knew he was with